So let's start with that. For those who don't know, Randy, why should they care that we essentially no longer have a Department of Education?
So, Waj, let me say this. First off, thank you for having me on. But to all the people who are the naysayers about the Department of Education or bureaucracy or things like that, I'm going to surprise all of your subscribers. My predecessor, Al Shanker, didn't want there to be Department of Education. He basically said, keep it in health, education, and welfare, because if you keep children separate from everything else, people will go after kids. People will abandon them. People will not, they will think that it's okay to do something to them politically. And that is exactly what the Trump administration is doing. You said it about USAID. I would actually say I think that it's not just that they've abdicated their responsibility under congressional oversight. They just don't care about kids and they don't care about the future. And
There you
so
go.
just think about the four things in the last several months. Take SNAP. That's a perfect example. They didn't have to cut SNAP during a shutdown. In fact, no entity, no president ever did. But they cut SNAP, nutritional services that disproportionately hurt kids. Number two, the $1 trillion of cuts in Medicaid. Medicaid pays for the Children Health Insurance Program. Medicaid pays for so much of what we have in schools for health care for students. And,
Yep.
and so that $1 trillion cut, that goes right after what we have in schools. Number three, in the tax bill that they did, they put a $50 billion, double the amount they pay for kids right now in education, a $50 billion tax credit cut for vouchers, for privatization. And then what do they do to higher ed? They said they're doing some stuff in terms of Pell, but what have they done? Think about all the cuts to research in terms of higher education. And then on top of that, 45 million kids, young people, have student debt. They completely tied it into knots until we went to court over and over and over again to just even restart the student debt processes. And now, on top of all of that, they're basically saying, really, you're going to move all the programs that go for kids from pre-K to high school into the Labor Department? What does the Labor Department know about how to teach kids reading? And in fact, this is the last thing I'll say. They
No,
did
keep
some of
talking.
this. They did some of this already. After we lost, we were winning these cases to say, stop, you can't dismantle the Department of Education. But they go to the Supreme Court, to the shadow docket. They lifted the injunction. So they very quietly moved the career tech ed programs into the Labor Department. And just this week, this is something that's a Trump priority. I love career tech ed. He likes career tech ed. We want to have different pathways in high schools for kids to go into plumbing or advanced manufacturing or cooking or culinary. We both love it. What does he do? He moves them quietly into the Department of Labor. And just this week, in testimony in Congress, there was testimony that showed excuse my language, what a shit show it is. That they can't even do anything, that they've made a mess of it. So that's exactly what they're going to do with all these other things. Create new bureaucracies who don't know what they're doing. And that is why this is about the abandonment of kids. This is not about making things more efficient. It's abandonment, it's evisceration. And because kids don't vote, they are really snatching the future from kids. No, so we're out there not saying, okay, the department shouldn't be more efficient. Of course it should. And there's a lot of things that the department does that I hated. But we need to make sure kids are front and center and that somebody is taking care of them.
Amen. And I'll add one more sad data point that just came out today about the CDC. Under
Got it.
RFK Jr., a complete fraudster, a charlatan, a man who promotes the most dangerous and debunked anti-vaccine theories, a person who, according to his cousin, is a predator. That RFK, who is not a doctor, has no healthcare experience whatsoever, who's the head of our Health and Human Services has, as of today, folks, directed the CDC to change the website's language on autism and vaccines. Folks, this is so dangerous that
So
now
dangerous.
doctors in the United States of America in the year 2025 are saying we can no longer trust our CDC. Not only that, he has promoted the dangerous, debunked conspiracy that vaccines are somehow dangerous, linked to autism, Tylenol is dangerous. So, what has happened, Randy, is in the past year, vaccine hesitancy has gone up
Way up.
and parents are no longer vaccinating their children, which has led to several outbreaks of measles. And the CDC director, whose name I'm forgetting, who RFK fired, even though Republicans were the ones who chose her, said right before she left, even though she contested her firing, but eventually he replaced her, she said, I'm not only worried about measles, I'm worried about polio coming back. And I'm sure you've seen, you and I are old enough that when we went to school, you had the MMR vaccines, which is why we didn't have to worry about measles. But now Florida is saying, hey, kiddos, why don't you try some measles on for change? Who needs a mandatory vaccine? Let's make measles great again. And so I joke with some dark humor, but folks, a child has already died. There's already been at least one reported death of a child because the anti-vax parents didn't vaccinate their kids. The children are the most vulnerable. Measles, folks, we didn't have to deal with it anymore because of vaccines. Polio, we didn't have to deal with because of vaccines. There's also bird flu, and the most vulnerable and marginalized, the sick, immunosuppressed, the elderly, and children will be the front line of this death march. And Randy, what I've been writing for several years, specifically when it comes to just like you laid out, the attack on science, the attack on vaccines, the attack on education, the attack on healthcare, is that the GOP is a pro-death movement. Now, you would think that this pro-death movement that is apparently pro-life would at least care about the children. And what I'm seeing right now, based on what you just said and what the CDC just sadly under RFK is doing, is they don't even care about the kids.
No, they
They're
don't.
perfectly fine throwing our children in the wood chipper. And people would say, Waj, that's exaggerating. You and Randy are being hyperbolic. You guys suffer from TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. But what other explanation is there? When you cut Medicaid, when you want to gut childcare research, and you already have to the tune of 30%, when you are dismantling public school systems, what other choice is there for kids other than to suffer and die? And Randy, going back to schools, you know the data, but last time I checked, 90% of American kids are taught in public schools, correct?
Yes. And they want to, and they want to, and I want to, I'm going to, I'm going to meet you, Waj, and do one more, which is the one thing I didn't talk about was they took all the kids with disabilities, the
Mm.
50-year-old individuals with disabilities in Education Act, and they're moving that where? To Robert Kennedy Jr. So think about it. Autism, kids on the spectrum are one of the biggest disabilities we deal with in terms of parents we deal with as teachers. And they're moving that to the place that not only falsely talks about how autism derives, but believes that there's no potential for kids with autism.
His
How
words.
dare? How dare? So what I think is happening, that's why when I saw this and saw where they were moving things, and I'm like leaving them to be dismembered and sold for parts. I'm like, wow, they really don't. I used to think they didn't care about other people's children. I'm really now thinking they just don't care about kids. Because
Mm.
why would you do this? Why would you think homeschooling is better? Why would you think that, why not? I mean, Bush, Reagan, other Republicans, I had disagreements, deep disagreements with them about how to do education. But you could not, they believed in our children. They had a different view about, accountability and how to do this work. But you would never see Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, or George Bush walk away from the obligation to children. You just would never see that. So this is a really different cut of Republicans, and I think what it is tribalism. What public schools do is they bring diverse people together. Remember that
Very
word
good.
diversity? That's
Well,
been
that you
they
said it. That's why they hate it.
and and we believe in public schools that we help all, like that other word, equality and equity. And we believe that even if you disagree with each other, we should have an inclusive environment. Like those are the things that we believe in. And it creates the habits of democracy and it creates a pluralistic environment, which actually has set apart this country from pretty much every other country in the world, maybe with the exception of Canada. So that's what we believe in. And look what they're doing. It's like they just are undermining every bit of a sense of equality, of pluralism, of society as a public good to sell it off for parts and for tribalism.
And Randy, can you connect the dots for people who don't know? Because people might think, oh, this is just MAGA. This isn't just MAGA. They have been threatened by these issues of diversity and equity. Not these issues, but I would say these principles, these values, ever since Brown versus Board of
Yes.
Education. And this culture war started not over abortion rights or gay marriage, but it's always about desegregation in public schools. Public schools has always been the this has been the seat of the culture war, folks.
Right.
Always. They have never gone over the fact that the Supreme Court in Brown versus Board of Education ruled that segregation was unconstitutional. They have never gone over the fact that they were forced to desegregate. They have never gone over the fact that they have lost so many of our young people to, science and literature and books written by Toni Morrison. And they have tried for the past 75 years to dismantle it. But we never thought, like you said, that even, the presidencies of George W. Bush, Ronald Reagan, we are fierce critics of them. But
Me
they
too.
said, they said, okay, there's an extent to which we'll go. Um, They've gone beyond that. Can you talk to us about how this has been a 75-year plan?
Yes. I mean, look, and and I'm sure that there are people who are listening, your subscribers, who think that things that I have proposed are wrong or don't work. But the value system is this. Since we have tried, and we were the only union that actually wrote an amicus brief in Brown versus Board of Education. And we actually were the only union to expel our segregated locals in the 1950s and the 1960s. So we're not perfect, but this whole notion in the post World War II era that we as a society, look, in the early 1900s, we as a society, the suffragists, we fought for the right to vote for women. As a society, we fought Frederick Douglass, abolitionists. We fought for the rights of people who were black and brown. And what happened in the 1950s, 1954, I think, the Supreme Court finally said separate but equal is not equal. It is that we have to make sure that all of God's children have a right to a decent education. And what happened from that point, and you're so right, is that in Virginia, instead of integrating schools, they closed schools. They created segregation academies. That's where the word choice and school choice started. And so from that point on, there has always been this race and this debate in this country between do we believe in a public good of public education for all so that every single child can climb that ladder of opportunity, including Waj, kids who are undocumented, Plyler v. Doe, kids who are undocumented had an absolute constitutional right to education. The 14th Amendment says persons. It doesn't say citizens. It
That's right.
says all persons. That's who our country has been. That's what the Constitution says. And what I'm simply trying to do is be true to the values of equality and freedom and dignity. Those should be American values. But what you see is that this administration and frankly a lot of extremists who are adjacent to it, they want to go back to a time when there was no equality, and they're trying to erase the last 75 years. And that's what's really dangerous. And of course, they focus on education because education is supposed to be the great equalizer.
And folks, if you think that's a stretch, I'm so glad you mentioned Virginia. One of the last counties to desegregate was Loudoun County, which is close by to me here. Well, I've been paying attention for the past 5 years, and I wrote a piece on this, a lengthy piece in the Daily Beast, and I said they're going to be using parent choice, CRT, and DEI, and make a boogeyman out of it, just like they did Sharia, just like they did welfare queens. And specifically in Loudoun County, that was the ground zero where they tested out this messaging, right? They're like, oh, DEI and CRT are taking over. And they went after Toni Morrison, remember that? And Black Books. But what they really kind of said, aha, this one works. Trans kids,
Yeah.
the trans issue. And then I was telling Democrats, Youngkin's going to run on this. He ran on, wait for it. You said it. Parental choice.
Right.
Trans, Toni Morrison books. But the anti-Black stuff didn't really work as much. The trans LGBTQ stuff really worked, right?
Yeah,
Then you
it's
saw Sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
and no, it's basically, but this is what's so interesting, and you lived it because you lived there. It's and look, I use Barbara Johns in my book as one of my heroes, and I love the fact that Abigail Spanberger, in her acceptance speech, in her victory speech, talked about the legacy of Barbara Johns, who was a Black kid in Prince Edwards County who tried to get to a better school, to try to integrate schools, and she became one of the plaintiffs in Brown versus Board of Education. She never got to go to an integrated school in Virginia, but she became ultimately a school librarian in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, in her adulthood. But what you see is a real renunciation of the Youngkin agenda
Yep.
because Stamberger ran on public education and her kids going to public schools. And what we saw this year just came out in Politico today.
I was going to bring it up. Yep.
We saw this year, and we saw this on election day. We didn't know it was everybody, but we saw on election day that that most of the pro public education candidates won their election. What Politico just said is that every pro public education candidate won their election in school.
Well, I'll just say that real quick because you brought it up. I was going to cite it. The Politico article that I shared from a couple hours ago is in culture war backlash. Democrats sweep school boards. The party recruited and invested in school board races to oust Republicans, and it worked across the board. So
Yeah.
woke it back apparently, Randy. But the problem is this: is Republicans spent over $200 million in the 2024 election on the anti-transgender fear-mongering. They specifically targeted colleges and schools. There are now more anti-trans bills than trans athletes in schools, and it worked.
Many more.
Yeah, and they've gone after drag queens, and you know what? America and the United States of amnesia, they went for it just like they went for it here in Virginia. I knew it. I knew it was going to happen because the Democrats didn't have a robust counter response. I'm like, Youngkin is going to win by 2 points. I live here. You guys, people are lying to you. A lot of these suburban voters, when it comes to their kids and schools, you aren't paying attention. It pains me that Republicans and Moms for Liberty specifically used a Muslim for their Supreme Court case here in Maryland, just like they used
Mahmoud.
an Asian, yep, just like they used an Asian face and an Asian body to promote the anti-affirmative action stuff, right? It always happens that way. So now we're seeing a robust counter response because of the overreach on economy, the overreach on immigration. But the problem is so much damage is done, Randy. And this is where, before we talk about how to fight back, I know it's going to be sobering. Talk to us about the generational damage that has been done already in
Look,
the last 11 months.
look, it's huge and it's a problem. Um, and, I don't mean to just completely wear rose-colored glasses right now, but at the end of the day, I was with Sarah McBride, who is
Yeah.
the only trans member of the House of Representatives. And what she said in the forum I was in, and Waj, as the first openly gay labor leader in the country.
You're gay?
And
I'm just kidding. Next thing you'll tell me is
surprise!
you're Jewish. What?
Surprise!
Oh,
As living through another era where people would spit on me, not physically, but you could see it. Friends would stop talking to me. Even the whole notion of telling people that you were gay in the 1970s and 80s,
mm,
it was a thing. And what I'm saying is we have a job, and this is what Sarah said, and it really moved me. We don't actually win anyone over by shame and by yelling at people and by shaming them. We win by by changing hearts and minds. We win by actually piercing the anger. I mean, even in looking at your notes here, there are people who are like, why is she still the union president? Why doesn't it's like, there are people everywhere who are angry about something. But our side, Team Humanity, we actually believe in dignity for all, and we're going to fight this this basic undermining of humanity, undermining of people that this administration has done for the last 11 months. But for the same reasons that I left the DNC, I think that we have to figure out how to create a bigger tent and how to make sure that people are listening to each other. And that's why I love the fact that Spamberger, look at what happened in Virginia. You saw it, lived there. Like, how many ads did you see from her opponent on trans issues, on trying to use that? And it didn't work this time.
nope.
And it didn't work in school board elections this time. So we have to, I think, find more and more ways to bring more and more Americans with us about the issues of affordability, about the issues of freedom, about the issues of opportunity, and about the issues of dignity. And I think that the more we can do, every candidate who did that won. The candidates who kept on doing what the, old time Democratic thing was, lost. So we have to push people, push candidates to
Yes.
actually deal with what working people want and what parents need. And that's why I think we won so much 2 Tuesdays ago.
And I've been saying it all day in different varieties and capacities with the guests I've had, is you have seen that the Democratic establishment, for lack of a better word, corporate centrists, hew to the right. Let's
Yes.
throw the transgender under the bus. That's what Gavin
Yeah.
Newsom did, folks. I keep the receipts. On his podcast right after Trump won, he invited Steve Bannon, he invited Charlie Kirk, he threw transgender kids under the bus. Let's not go woke anymore. Lisa Slotkin said it. I'm keeping receipts. Let's throw undocumented under the bus. Democrats, voted for the Lake and Riley Act. Let's not say anything about pro-Palestinian activists Mahmoud Khalil and Rumeza Oster, who are straight up kidnapped. Let's just keep quiet. Let's not say anything about the El Salvadoran men like Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Let's be Republican light because we don't know how to message and the polls are bad. Let's not, be proactive and be Team Humanity and lead and create a better message. Then you see Zoran Mamdani. He says affordability. I don't like the oligarchy. I don't like the billionaires. I'll work with them if I have to. Affordability for all. I won't throw anyone under the bus. I'll raise them all up and I'll fight. And you saw them win. Randy, when it comes to school boards, I've been saying this for years. Don't throw the transgender under the bus. Don't throw LGBTQ under the bus. Don't throw black folks under the bus. Don't throw DEI under the bus. Counter message. Counter
Exactly.
message. Fight. And they didn't fight, folks. I'm telling you, they didn't fight. They're like, throw them under the bus. Right. And I also said, because being a student of history, schools are the ground zero of the culture war. They always
Yep.
have been. And I've been saying for 5 years, I've still been saying, so many people come up to me and they're like, Waj, what can I do? I'm nobody. And I'm like, I'm a nobody too. I said, you know what you should do? You should run for school board because a few MAGA people come, and it's always a few, Moms for Liberty, 3 or 4. They don't have the numbers, but they're well funded, they're well organized, they have the entire right wing machinery, and then they come in and they take over. But every single time that we, the majority, show up, even in red states, Randy, we win. And so I'm going back to the schools. I feel like school board after school board is a way that the rest of
Exactly
us
right.
actually fight back and push the Democratic establishment that has to fear us as well. But you're the pro here. Talk to us about this strategy that I have about local school boards.
No, look, a strategy about low to the ground on anything is really, really important because when I say low to the ground, where do people live? Where people have their communities. It's basically in neighborhoods. It's basically in towns, cities, rural areas. And that's where you actually win or lose society. And I saw it, I saw it in terms of marriage equality. And just FYI for you, Waj, we had a webinar this week with Casey Puck from Trevor Project
Mm.
about how we help teachers and how we help parents and how we help our kids who are trans. So, just for the record, our union is Team Dignity. Our union is Team Humanity. Our union understands we have to, you know, arm educators with the tools that are necessary, to borrow somebody who said, why don't we arm people with books? We have to arm our members with tools so that they can create a safe and welcoming environment for all our kids, including our trans kids. And so we understand that, and that's why this week we actually had it's a webinar. You can see it on our website, I believe, but a webinar with how we help our trans kids. But ultimately, I think it's two things. I think that we have to focus in schooling, yes, of course, on having public schools, but we have to focus on the basics. Like like public schooling needs to be about making sure that we're teaching kids how to read effectively, making sure we're teaching kids how to do math effectively, making sure they have a safe and welcoming environment, and also giving them, as they get older and older, the curriculum not only about critical thinking and problem solving, but things they like, things that are cool, things that are interesting. So so sometimes, a child, a young person, Toni Morrison may change that person's life. A book where you look at the cover of the book and it looks like you. And there's a character that's like you. So that's why banning books is so bad. That's why actually erasing history is so bad. It's not just for all the social and the freedom reasons, but it's also to make sure kids really feel like they belong. And we have to find ways to talk to parents so that they see this is not something to be afraid of, but this is something that creates a welcoming and safe environment. So, listening and finding ways to talk to people about what we're doing and why is so important.
No,
But the
and I was
schools are the schools are the place where you're right that, critical thinking, habits of democracy, pluralism, those things are really, really dangerous to people who fear knowledge and who fear acceptance.
Yeah, that's why, folks, school boards, public schools, local schools, I'm telling you, this has been 75 years. The right wing has been after it, and now they've gutted the Department of Education. They're going after CRT. They're going after diversity. They wanted the Coast Guard to embrace the swastika and the noose and the Confederate flag as not as hate symbols, but what was they said? I don't even want to say what they said, but thankfully a day later it was reversed because I think the swastika was a bridge too far. I don't know about you, Randy. We've been alive for a while. I've never met anyone with a swastika tattoo that has approached me in good faith. But that's just me. Maybe there's some friendly swastika folks out there. But I digress. This is the America that we're living in right now because they're a white nationalist regime that's playing for all the marbles, and they want to dismantle the teachers union. They want to dismantle public schools because public schools is where our kids are exposed to science, to math,
Exactly.
to people of different ethnicities, and they can't stand that. And I'll give an example, two examples. When I was growing up, Randy, The first time I had ever read a book that featured a character like me was college, UC Berkeley. The first time I had a teacher who looked like me was college, UC Berkeley. That's 18 years. Now, I went to my kid's school yesterday, the local public school, and I don't know if you know this, you're a teacher, but for those who don't know, they sometimes invite the parents to have lunch. I got three kids, so I was there from 10:30 to 11 for the baby. I was there from 11:30 to 12 for the fourth grader, and I was there from 12:30 to 1:30 for the fifth grader.
So
And
you had parent teacher day, not parent teacher
yeah, I
night.
did a parent teacher day. And this is what I want to say. These kids, this particular school I'm at, where my kids are at, they have 50 nations represented. Most of the kids it's very multicultural. A lot of kids from Honduras, a lot of kids from El Salvador, a lot of kids from Ethiopia, 50 nations on their international day. It was really beautiful. My son is friends with all these different ethnicities: white, Christian, Latino, Honduras, Arab, black. My daughter, all her friends were four different types of black girls: a black girl, a black American girl, a black hijabi girl, a black Muslim girl, a black Christian girl, right? They're exposed to this. They don't freak out. They understand, different pronouns. My kids don't freak out about transgender. They're fine. They're empathetic. They were kind. They helped each other. It was really sweet, Randy. I'm like, these kids are actually much better than us. They don't bully each other. They hugged each other. I'm like, what's happening? We didn't used to hug each other in fifth grade. What? And these kids, if they're given the opportunity, they thrive. They
Yep,
get it.
yep.
And what really there's an aspect of this I want to ask is I remember we went for lunch and the kids got free lunches. And, I was talking to another parent and she was like, yeah, because this certain school in this district, something happened. She goes, our kids get free public lunches, but not every kid gets a free public lunch. And something just sat there with me, Randy, and just pissed me off all day that kids in America, the most wealthy country on earth, in Virginia, where I live, in the next district over, kids have to pay for their lunch. And then I thought, kids are kids. Parents mess up sometimes. If a parent forgets to pack the lunch, kids then go to school in the richest country on earth and starve. Sorry for my long windup, but that to me
So
just pisses me off. And I think it's
so
inexcusable.
so this is so, let me off of what you just said, give all of you and all of your listeners kind of like a tutorial about who teachers unions are and what we try to do. So under Title One, one of those things are now being moved to the Labor Department that doesn't know how to deal with any kids because it doesn't deal with any kids. So under Title One, you had to have a certain percentage as expressed by free lunch forms
Mm,
who were eligible for to get the federal money for Title One. And so what we used to do is we used to actually try to figure out all sorts of ways with PTAs, with principals, our union. When I was, working in New York City, we did this all the time, finding ways to encourage our parents to actually fill out those free lunch forms so that A, their kids would get free lunch and there would be no lunch shaming, and B, we'd get the money, the federal Title One money. A lot of states, and this started, Ilhan Omar had a piece of legislation about it. A lot of states, Minnesota, my home state of New York, other states, we got during the Biden administration changes in the hunger laws, for lack of a better word, to actually start saying, stop the lunch shaming. Let's make sure there's universal free lunch. Let's make sure all kids, whether parent forgot to do the form or is embarrassed about the form or doesn't know English, so didn't know how to do the form. Let's actually try to have in our state free lunch for all kids. And so many states have done that. The big ugly bill changes all that again.
mm.
And now we got to go back to scratch to figure out how to do this once this bill is fully implemented. because they make it harder for us to do that.
And I'll keep you for a couple more minutes, Randy, if you don't mind. But you got me going. I didn't know that the big beautiful bill. I knew a lot of stuff, but I didn't know it did that because I just sat there and thought about it yesterday. And it just pissed me off that in the world's most wealthy country, there are kids who go to public schools. 90% of our kids are educated in public schools, folks, who are hungry.
Yeah,
And we somehow don't have money for free shitty lunches for kids, but we have $40 billion for Melee.
exactly.
We have $172 million to give Chrissy Noman her boyfriend private jets. Cash Patel can spend millions of dollars to go see his honeypot girlfriend. Donald Trump amasses $5 billion through shady ass crypto grift that I think one day we'll do research on and realize it was probably all illegal. He throws a great Gatsby party. AI can get all these deregulations. Crypto can make all these people wealthy, but we cannot feed our children. And it
And
just
every
sits
time
there.
and every time we try, people tell us, they call us all sorts of names. And then, where they say the teacher unions are for themselves. Every time we try to actually make sure that the priorities, I mean, I don't care that there are billionaires in the country. Fine. Let there be billionaires, but let us have fairness for everybody else in the country, including our children. That's what you and I are saying.
Yeah, and the fact that they don't care about our kids, the fact that you saw folks, CDC, lunches, labor laws being reformed so that young kids now can go work in factories and get injured. That's what's happening. Measles skyrocketing. They don't care. Herd immunity. RFK wants a registry for autistic kids because he apparently says they have no future. Apparently, he's never met an autistic kid, never met the autistic kids in my family who are doing just fine, folks. This is who they are, a type of unbridled cruelty that is rarely seen. Even Hungary isn't this bad, folks. Even Orban realizes, let them eat some cake and then let me be a fascist. They don't even want to give us cake. And I do want to ask you about one other overreach because it's something I've shared on the show before, and it really just has pissed me off. So I'll share this personal story. Like I said, 50 different nations represented, mostly immigrant kids, children of immigrants, very multicultural, the school that my kids go to. A couple of weeks ago, I shared this on the Left Hook, that my kids and their friends, my house is that house, Randy, there's like 7 kids at all times. So I'm going to be expecting 6 kids coming over right now, just that house. Um, these kids, I heard them talking, and they said, "Oh, white vans. We have to avoid them because of ICE." I'm like, "What? Who told you that?" So then I thought maybe my wife said something to them. I'm like, "Hey, Sarah, we tell our kids stuff, but maybe not all that." She goes, "I didn't say this." So the kids themselves, Randy, are looking out for each other. And every time they see a white van in my neighborhood, they go, "Oh, it might be ICE," just to protect each other. The kids are talking
Yeah.
amongst themselves. I heard this and it makes my blood boil. Then, in addition to now worrying about whether kids have public schools, in addition about worrying whether or not our kids get friggin' meals in America, in addition to worrying about whether my kid might get shot because there's friggin' school shootings every week, my kids are looking out for each other and doing surveillance for white vans because they know ICE is coming to schools. Randy.
Exactly right. No, look, I have to tell you, I have a lot of people we represent in Portland, Washington, D.C., Chicago, LA, and all of us are learning from each other what is the effective strategies for how we protect our kids and their families from ICE. I remember the last couple of days saying to someone from New York City when they said, "What is the learning from Chicago?" I'm like, "A whistle. Get whistles. We need to always have an early warning system." And the community groups that have been created in terms of ensuring that we are looking after each other. The thing that surprises me most, look at the Catholic Church, look at the bishops. All of
Mm,
a sudden, love thy neighbor, embrace the stranger. All of a sudden, that scripture is now starting to be endemic in places like Chicago. And look at what now has happened. ICE has now left Chicago. They were cruel, they were violent. A 1-year-old being shot with pepper spray, a school teacher. pre-K school teacher being taken out of her classroom. Look what's happening right now in Charlotte. A church packed to the gills this week of people saying we are protecting our neighbors in a
Yep.
fairly affluent neighborhood. And you saw disproportionately white folks basically saying, no, this is not America. So I think that's amazing about your kids. And I'm seeing it with kids and teachers and community all across the country, basically saying, no, we are team dignity. We are team humanity. We may disagree with each other on tax policy, even school policy, but we have to be team humanity. And I'm seeing the best coming out of people across America.
Final question to you, Randy. We see some good news. We see people fighting back. We see the overreach. But again, we are pragmatists. We can't lie to people. Generational damage has already been done.
Yes.
They're not going to stop. I've heard from many parents, and I want you to make this pitch if you can. I heard from many parents. You know what? Public school system sucks. I'm not gonna, I only have one kid. I'm not gonna risk it. I'm gonna homeschool, or I'm gonna go to private school. And you know what? Let the Republicans and Democrats figure this out. But I ain't gonna risk my kid to be the canary in the coal mine. Your response to so many of those parents who are homeschooling now, going to private schools, that are giving up on public schools, and of course, they love their kids. Your pitch to them to invest in public schools and also the kids who go to public schools.
So my pitch is simply this. Look, you have a right to any of those parents. You have a right to do whatever you deem to be the best interest of your kids. I'm not going to substitute my judgment for yours, but let me tell you what your kids get out of public schools. One, we always have to strengthen them. But what happens is your kids get to know other kids. They get to work with other kids. They get to actually deal with how to grow, how to talk to people, how to engage with other people. They get to have the life skills about teaching, about being prepared for life, for career, for college, for dealing with conflict, for seeing the joy of when kids work together in a play, on a school team, on a debate, that kind of stuff that teachers like myself, when we see kids have that light bulb go off, there's nothing better. That is the community that we are trying to create in public schooling. That is the community. That is why public schools are like the town square. And so we want to make sure that we do everything right by your kid. We want to make sure that we do everything right by other kids. But the school teachers of America are doing everything in their power to make sure that your kid thrives.
Amen. Randy, I kept you longer. Thank you for staying with me. Can you please now do something that I did and shamelessly promote yourself?
No, I cannot. I'm sorry. But I do love being with you, and I do love um, being a school teacher and a labor leader and having the honor to actually represent so many amazing people. And thank you for promoting my book, Why
Why
Fascists Fear
Fascists
Teachers.
Fear Teachers. Why Fascists Fear Teachers is Randy's book. And Randy is also a labor leader, attorney like me. I haven't
Yes.
practiced in a long time, an educator who is the president of the American Federation of Teachers. Folks, Trump has dismantled the Department of Education. They're not done. They're going after our public schools. They're going at the schools, and our children, sadly, have always been ground zero for the culture war that is endless. They're going for a white nationalist authoritarian agenda. They're playing for all the marbles now, and they're not hiding it, folks. It's open. They literally wanted the swastika and the noose. I'm not making this up, in the Confederate flag, to not be seen as the symbols of hate. And thank God there was pushback, and the Coast Guard said, okay, okay, okay. Fine,
Right.
fine. The swastika is a symbol of hate. Fine, but they're not going to stop. And so we'll end on the good news again for the people who are joining us late. Is that Politico came out with an article that said, in a major culture war, wait for it, backlash, woke is back, baby. Democrats swept the school boards. There is a way forward, folks.
Right.
Where you do not have to throw the most marginalized under the bus. There is a way forward where you do not have to throw immigrants under the bus. There is a way forward where you don't have to throw girls and black people and LGBTQ under the bus. There is a way forward where you don't have to throw workers under the bus. There is a way forward that can bring us all together and uplift all of us. And this is my last final take, those Democrats who are unwilling to lift all of us up, who are willing on the drop of the dime to throw an autistic kid or an undocumented kid or LGBTQ kid under the bus for sake of political power, um, we don't need them anymore, Randy. I don't think we need them anymore. I think we should cull them. I think we should get rid of them. And I think we, the people, uh, can force these Democrats
Right.
to actually fight for all of us. I think this is a generational moment.
I agree with you, and I think that we saw it. Look, I would say that in all those pro-public education races, nobody was talking about woke or not woke. They were talking about what real issues are for people. In the other local and state races, low to the ground, the people who won are the people who care about people and talking about the issues that matter to people. And I would hope that other Democrats in our party, look, I'm still a Democrat, other Democrats in our party will start listening to what the people want, not just what big donors want.
Folks, I know there's some people saying, "Oh, I wish I joined this live." We have about almost 1,600 people. It'll be up later on my Substack. I wanted to talk to Randy so much that I have to run for a flight.
Oh
Somehow I'll
no.
make no, but it's
You'll
fine. We have a
get
couple
there,
minutes.
get there.
We'll get there. But for those, it'll be up later, maybe on the plane. I got to go back to my hometown. I've been traveling nonstop. It's okay. First world problems. But I'm actually going to help a friend who is running for office, never thought she would run. And she is a mom, she was a dentist, and she decided to get involved, wait for it, through the school board. And then by being there in the school board, she said by being a woman of color, she was able to be a counter to the insane Moms for Liberty people and speak up for the community. So she's now running for higher office. So we're going to go and have a conversation in the Bay Area. But Randy, this conversation will be up later today. I've also talked to Jacob Silverman about the Oligarchy. We also talked to Joanne Reed and we talked to Danielle Moody. It was a really good day today. Folks, be kind, be informed, take care of each other, take care of your children and your neighborhood kids. It all starts at the local level first. And please, oh, please don't be a fascist. Thank you, Randy.
Thank you.
Bye,
Safe
everyone.
trip. Bye, everybody.